Maya Chen had lived in the shadow of forgetting for 17 years. On the remote mining station of Kepler 442b, she was just another human orphan, another mouth to feed among the dregs of galactic society. The station crawled with species from across the known universe, all united in their desperate scramble for the precious quantum crystals buried deep in the planet's crust. Her adoptive parents, the Hendersons, were kind enough people, but they worked 18-hour shifts in the mines and barely had energy to acknowledge her existence. Maya spent her days in the station's crumbling education center, taught by outdated AI systems that hadn't been updated in decades. While other children her age across the galaxy prepared for university entrance exams, Maya learned basic arithmetic and struggled with a reading program designed for much younger students. The morning everything changed started like any other. Maya sat in the empty cafeteria, picking at her protein paste while watching the news feeds on the wall display. The anchor, a sleek Altarian with luminescent blue skin, was discussing the latest admissions to the Celestial Institute of Advanced Sciences, the most prestigious educational institution in the known galaxy. This year's incoming class represents the finest minds from over 2,000 worlds, the anchor announced, her voice carrying that particular tone of reverence reserved for discussing the truly elite. Students accepted into the institute go on to lead governments, pioneer new technologies, and shape the very future of galactic civilization. Maya watched as images of the accepted students flashed across the screen. A young Xanthorian with silver scales and eyes like liquid mercury. A vegan prodigy whose species was known for their mathematical genius. A Rigelian whose people had mastered interstellar engineering thousands of years before humans had even discovered fire. Each face represented the pinnacle of their species' achievement, carefully selected from billions of applicants. Not a single human this year, Maya noticed, though this wasn't particularly surprising. Humans were still relative newcomers to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 3 centuries ago. Most alien species viewed them as industrious but unremarkable, good for manual labor and basic technical work but lacking the intellectual sophistication for truly advanced study. "Hey, dreamer, you're going to be late for your shift." Maya looked up to see Kex, a gruff Tellurian whose crystalline skin caught the artificial light of the cafeteria. Like most of the station's inhabitants, he worked in the mines, but he also served as a part-time supervisor for the younger residents. "I don't have a shift today," Maya replied, confused. "It's study period." Kex's laugh was like grinding stone. "Study period? For what?" "You're 17, Chen. Time to start earning your keep like everyone else. Henderson signed you up for or processing. Report to level 7 in 10 minutes. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Or processing was mind-numbing work, sorting raw crystal fragments by hand for hours on end. It was what happened to people who had no other prospects, no other future. She had always assumed she would continue her studies, perhaps even apply to one of the smaller regional universities when she turned 18. "But I haven't finished my education," she protested. "Education?" Kex snorted. "Look around, kid. This is a mining station, not some fancy academy. You've learned enough to do a job. That's all anyone needs." As Maya made her way down to level 7, her mind raced. The corridors of the mining station were cramped and poorly lit, filled with the constant hum of machinery and the acrid smell of processed minerals. Workers of dozens of different species hurried past her, their faces marked by exhaustion and resignation. Was this really her future? Was this all she would ever be? Level 7 was a vast cavern carved from the planet's bedrock, filled with conveyor belts and sorting stations. The air was thick with dust that made her eyes water and her throat burn. Maya found her assigned station and began the monotonous work of examining crystal fragments, separating the valuable quantum-grade material from worthless rock. The supervisor, a 6-armed draconian named Voss, patrolled the work area with the predatory grace of his species. His reptilian eyes missed nothing, and workers who moved too slowly or made mistakes quickly felt the sting of his neural prod. "New worker," Voss hissed as he approached Maya's station. "You will sort 1,000 fragments per hour. No talking. No breaks. Failure to meet quota results in punishment." Maya nodded silently and returned to her work. The fragments were small and sharp, cutting her fingers despite the thin gloves she had been given. Around her, other workers moved with the mechanical precision of people who had long ago given up hope of anything better. Hours passed in mind-numbing repetition. Sort, examine, classify, discard. Maya's back ached from bending over the conveyor belt, and her eyes strained to identify the subtle differences between valuable and worthless material. As the day wore on, she began to notice patterns in the crystal fragments that the other workers seemed to miss. Some pieces that looked worthless to the naked eye actually contained tiny veins of quantum material that glowed faintly under certain angles of light. Other fragments that appeared valuable were actually clever fakes, common crystals that had been treated to mimic the appearance of the real thing. Maya found herself catching dozens of misclassified pieces that had been passed by more experienced workers. By the end of her first shift, Maya had not only met her quota but had identified several valuable pieces that had been marked for discard and caught numerous fakes that would have contaminated the final product. Voss noticed her unusual performance with suspicion. He called out as Maya prepared to leave. How did you identify those pieces? Maya looked down at the small pile of crystals she had set aside. They just looked different. The light hits them wrong, or the internal structure doesn't match what it should be. Voss examined the crystals with a sophisticated scanner and confirmed Maya's assessments. His reptilian features showed confusion and something that might have been respect. You have unusual perception for a human, he admitted grudgingly. Most workers take months to develop this level of skill, if they develop it at all. You did this on your first day with no training. Maya shrugged, not sure how to respond. The ability had seemed natural to her, almost instinctive. She had always been good at seeing patterns and details that others missed, but she had never thought of it as particularly special. That night, Maya lay in her cramped bunk and stared at the ceiling. The dormitory was filled with the sounds of exhausted workers trying to sleep despite the constant vibrations of the mining equipment. Her body ached from the unaccustomed labor, but her mind was more active than ever. She thought about the news report she had seen that morning, about the brilliant students entering the Celestial Institute. What made them so special? What did they have that she lacked? As she drifted off to sleep, Maya made a decision that would change the course of her life. The next morning, instead of reporting to Level 7, Maya made her way to the station's communications center. The facility was small and outdated, designed primarily for emergency communications with the outside galaxy, but it had access to the Galactic Information Network. Maya had saved every credit she had ever earned from odd jobs around the station, and she used them to purchase access time on the network. Her hands shook as she navigated to the Celestial Institute's official website and found their admissions information. The requirements were staggering. Applicants needed transcripts from accredited institutions, letters of recommendation from recognized scholars, and scores from standardized tests that weren't even offered on most human worlds. The application fee alone was more than Maya would earn in 5 years of ore processing. But, at the bottom of the requirements page, Maya found something that made her heart skip a beat. In small print, almost hidden among the formal language, was a provision for exceptional circumstances applications. Students who could demonstrate extraordinary ability but lacked traditional credentials could apply through a special process that included practical examinations and psychological evaluations. Maya began to compose her application letter, pouring everything she had into the words. She wrote about her life on the mining station, her lack of formal education, and her desperate desire to learn and grow. She described her unusual ability to see patterns in the crystal fragments and her intuitive understanding of complex systems. The letter was raw and honest, nothing like the polished essays that privileged students from core worlds would submit. With her application, Maya included a detailed analysis of the quantum crystal sorting process, pointing out inefficiencies in the current system and proposing improvements that could increase yield by 30%. She had developed this analysis during her single day of work in the mines, drawing on patterns she had observed and theories she had developed through her limited study of physics and chemistry. As she prepared to submit the application, Maya's hands trembled with a mixture of fear and hope. She was essentially throwing away her life savings on what was probably an impossible dream. If the institute rejected her application, she would have nothing left but a lifetime of sorting crystal fragments on a forgotten mining station. But something deep inside her, something she could barely name, insisted that she had to try. Maya Chen had spent 17 years being forgotten and overlooked. Maybe it was time to see what would happen if someone finally noticed her. She submitted the application and returned to her work in the mines. Days turned into weeks, and Maya threw herself into her labor with renewed determination. She developed new techniques for identifying valuable materials and began teaching other workers to improve their efficiency. Voss watched her progress with growing amazement as Maya consistently outperformed workers with decades of experience. 3 months after submitting her application, Maya had almost convinced herself that she had wasted her money on an impossible dream. She was sorting fragments during the night shift when Kex appeared at her workstation, his crystalline features unreadable. "Chen," he said gruffly. "You've got a priority communication waiting at the comm center." Something about an institute response. Maya's heart stopped. This was it, the moment that would determine the rest of her life. She made her way to the communication center with legs that felt like water, her mind racing with possibilities. The message could be anything: a polite rejection, a request for additional information, or maybe, just maybe, something more. The communication terminal displayed a simple text message with the official seal of the Celestial Institute of Advanced Sciences. Maya's hand shook as she opened the file and began to read. "Dear Ms. Chen," the message began. "The admissions committee has reviewed your exceptional circumstances application with great interest. Your analysis of quantum crystal properties demonstrates remarkable insight for someone with your educational background. We would like to invite you to participate in our practical examination process, which will take place on the Institute's main campus in 30 days. Transportation and accommodations will be provided. Please confirm your acceptance of this invitation within 72 hours. Maya read the message 3 times before it fully sank in. She was going to the Celestial Institute. After 17 years of being forgotten and overlooked, someone had finally noticed her potential. Whatever happened next, her life would never be the same. The mining station had always felt like a prison, but now it felt like a launching pad. Maya Chen was about to discover just how much power she had been hiding, and the galaxy was about to learn that humans could be far more than anyone had ever imagined. She confirmed her acceptance immediately and began the most important journey of her life. The transport ship that carried Maya to the Celestial Institute was unlike anything she had ever seen. Where the vessels that serviced the mining station were crude and functional, this ship was a work of art. Its hull curved with elegant lines that seemed to bend space around them, and its engines hummed with the quiet power of technology so advanced it seemed like magic. Maya spent most of the 3-day journey pressed against the observation windows, watching stars whirl past in patterns she had never seen from her remote corner of the galaxy. The other passengers were mostly wealthy families dropping off their children for the start of the academic year, and Maya felt acutely aware of her rough mining station clothes and calloused hands. The Institute's home world appeared before them like a jewel against the black of space. Nexus Prime was an artificial planet, constructed over millennia by the greatest minds in the galaxy as a monument to learning and discovery. Its surface gleamed with cities of crystal and metal that spiraled up from the ground like living things, connected by streams of light that carried information and energy between research centers. As their shuttle descended toward the planet's surface, Maya caught her first glimpse of the Institute itself. The main campus stretched across an entire continent, its buildings rising from manicured landscapes in impossible geometries that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Floating gardens drifted between towering spires, and waterfalls flowed upward from crystal pools to disappear into clouded peaks that touched the edge of space. "First time seeing the Institute?" asked a voice beside her. Maya turned to see a young woman about her own age with the distinctive golden skin and silver hair of the Arcturian nobility. Her clothes were cut from fabric that seemed to shift color with her movements, and her eyes held the confidence of someone who had never doubted her place in the universe. "Yes," Maya replied, suddenly conscious of her accent, which marked her as being from the galactic rim. "I'm here for examinations." The Arcturian's expression shifted to one of polite confusion. "Examinations? But the academic year started 2 months ago. Are you applying for next year's class?" "No, I'm part of the exceptional circumstances process," Maya said, her voice smaller than she intended. Understanding dawned in the alien girl's features, followed quickly by a mixture of curiosity and pity. "Oh, you're one of the charity cases. How interesting."
I'm Lyra Vex Meridian, House of the Silver Flame. My family has attended the Institute for 12 generations.
Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks but forced herself to remain calm.
I'm Maya Chun. I'm from Kepler 442b.
Never heard of it, Lyra said dismissively, then seemed to catch herself. But I'm sure you're very accomplished wherever it is you're from. The Institute occasionally accepts students from unusual backgrounds as part of their diversity initiatives. The shuttle touched down on a landing platform that extended from one of the Institute's central towers. As Maya gathered her few possessions, she noticed that the other passengers were greeted by floating luggage attendants and personal assistants. She shouldered her worn backpack and followed the crowd toward the processing center.
The interior of the Institute was even more impressive than its exterior.
Corridors stretched in directions that seemed to bend through dimensions Maya couldn't name, and the walls themselves were alive with flowing patterns of light that responded to the presence of students and faculty. Holographic displays provided information in dozens of languages, and the air hummed with the subtle energy of technology so advanced it was indistinguishable from magic. Maya was directed to a small office where a thin, insectoid being with multiple arms and compound eyes processed her paperwork. The administrator, whose nameplate identified her as Kixtel of the Zephyrian Registry, examined Maya's documents with the skeptical attention of someone who had seen many hopeful applicants fail to meet the Institute's standards. Miss Chen, Kixtel said, her voice carrying the clicking undertones of her species, you understand that the exceptional circumstances examination is extremely difficult. In the past 50 years, only 7 applicants have successfully completed the process, and none of them were human. I understand, Maya replied, though her confidence was beginning to waver. You will undergo 3 days of testing, Kixtel continued. Physical examinations, psychological evaluations, and practical problem-solving exercises. The examinations are designed to push candidates beyond their perceived limitations. Many applicants suffer psychological breaks during the process.
Maya nodded, trying to project more confidence than she felt.
Around her, she could hear the sounds of normal student life. Laughter echoed from nearby corridors, and she caught glimpses of young beings from across the galaxy engaged in casual conversation about subjects she could barely comprehend. Your quarters are in the provisional wing, Kixtel said, handing Maya a small device that pulsed with soft blue light. This will guide you to your room and provide access to basic facilities. Your examinations begin at 0600 tomorrow. I suggest you rest. Maya's room was smaller than she had expected but infinitely more luxurious than anything she had known on the mining station.
The walls could be programmed to display any environment she desired, and the bed adjusted automatically to her body's needs. A small alcove contained a food synthesizer that could produce meals from any of 10,000 galactic cuisines. Despite the comfort, Maya found it impossible to sleep. She stood at the room's window, looking out over the Institute's nighttime campus. Students moved between buildings in small groups, their conversations animated by the passion of minds engaged with complex ideas. Maya watched a group of young Altarians practicing some kind of energy manipulation exercise, their bodies wreathed in controlled lightning that danced between their fingers. In another courtyard, she saw a mixed group of species working together on what appeared to be a mechanical project. A young Centaurian with 4 arms was carefully adjusting delicate components while a Draconian provided precision welding with controlled flame breath. The cooperation between species that had once been enemies was beautiful to witness.
Maya realized she was seeing the future of galactic civilization. These students would go on to lead governments, pioneer new technologies, and solve the great challenges facing the universe. They were the best and brightest minds of their generation, carefully selected and rigorously trained to shape tomorrow. And, somehow, impossibly, she was here among them.
The first day of examinations began before dawn.
Maya was awakened by a gentle chime and directed to a medical facility where teams of alien physicians conducted the most thorough physical examination of her life. They scanned every cell in her body with instruments she couldn't begin to understand, testing her reflexes, endurance, and mental acuity. Unusual neural pathways, one physician muttered to another in what they probably thought was too low a voice for Maya to hear. Pattern recognition capabilities well above average for her species. The psychological evaluation was conducted by Dr. Theshan, a distinguished Vulcarite whose people were renowned throughout the galaxy for their understanding of the mind. Dr. Thession's appearance was vaguely humanoid, but his head was larger than any human's, with ridged skull plates that indicated advanced brain development. "Tell me about your earliest memory," Dr. Thession said, his voice carrying subtle harmonics that seemed to resonate directly with Maya's thoughts.
Maya found herself describing memories she hadn't thought about in years.
Her arrival at the mining station as a 3-year-old, the kind woman who had first taught her to read, her realization that she saw patterns in everything around her that others seemed to miss.
Dr.
Thession listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions that probed deeper into her experiences and motivations. "You have spent your life being underestimated," he observed.
"How has this affected your relationship with your own abilities?"
"I learned to hide them," Maya admitted.
On the station, being different wasn't an advantage. People who stood out usually ended up in trouble.
"And yet you applied to the institute.
What changed?" Maya thought about this for a long moment.
"I realized that hiding wasn't protecting me anymore. It was just making me disappear."
Dr. Thession made notes on a device Maya couldn't see. "Interesting.
You demonstrate high intelligence, strong pattern recognition abilities, and remarkable emotional resilience. However, you also show signs of cultural conditioning that may limit your potential. We will need to address this if you are to succeed here."
The practical examinations were unlike anything Maya could have imagined.
She was presented with problems that seemed impossible, challenges that required not just knowledge but intuition and creativity. In one test, she was given a malfunctioning quantum processor and asked to diagnose the problem using only basic tools and her own understanding. Maya had never seen a quantum processor before, but as she examined the device, familiar patterns began to emerge. The malfunction was similar to the flaws she had learned to spot in crystal fragments, just on a much more complex scale. She traced pathways of energy through the processor's matrix, identifying discontinuities and resonance failures with an intuition she couldn't explain.
"How did you know to check the tertiary resonance chamber?" asked Professor Valdres, the Rigelian engineer who was administering the test. "It just felt wrong," Maya replied, knowing how inadequate her explanation sounded.
"The energy flow was interrupted in a way that reminded me of fractured crystal matrices."
Professor Valdres' four eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought among his species.
"You are comparing quantum field dynamics to mineral crystal structure.
That is a connection most students wouldn't make until their third year of study." The second day brought even greater challenges.
Maya was placed in a simulator and asked to navigate a spacecraft through an asteroid field while solving mathematical puzzles and conducting diplomatic negotiations with hostile aliens. The test was designed to evaluate multitasking abilities and performance under pressure. Most candidates, Maya learned later, became overwhelmed within minutes and either crashed their simulated ship or failed to maintain their other assigned tasks.
Maya found the experience exhilarating.
Her mind seemed to split into multiple streams, each focused on a different aspect of the challenge. She piloted the ship with instinctive skill, solved the mathematical problems by recognizing underlying patterns, and negotiated successfully with the hostile aliens by reading their emotional responses and adapting her approach accordingly.
"Remarkable," she heard one of the observers say. "She's maintaining optimal performance across all metrics simultaneously. I've never seen anything like it." On the third day, Maya was brought before the full examination committee, a panel of the most distinguished faculty members from across the institute. They represented dozens of species and disciplines, each a master in their field of study.
At the center of the panel sat Director Zorith, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix who was rumored to be over 10,000 years old.
"Ms. Chen," Director Zorith's voice resonated through harmonics that bypassed Maya's ears and spoke directly to her mind.
"You have performed exceptionally well on our examinations. Your abilities are unexpected for a human from your background."
Maya felt the weight of their attention like a physical force.
These beings had shaped the course of galactic history, had unlocked the fundamental secrets of the universe, and had trained the greatest minds of countless generations. And they were looking at her with something that might have been respect.
However, Director Zorith continued, "Exceptional ability alone is not sufficient for admission to the institute.
We must also consider your potential for growth, your dedication to the pursuit of knowledge, and your character. Tell us why you believe you belong here." Maya felt the moment crystallize around her. This was her chance, perhaps her only chance, to convince the greatest minds in the galaxy that a forgotten human girl from a mining station deserved a place among the stars. She took a deep breath and began to speak, not about her abilities or her achievements, but about her hunger. She spoke about nights spent staring at the stars through her dormitory window, dreaming of understanding the forces that moved them. She talked about her frustration with the limitations of her education, her desperate desire to learn and grow and contribute something meaningful to the universe. "I don't know if I belong here," Maya said finally, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "But I know that I'll never stop trying to earn my place. I've spent my whole life being overlooked and forgotten, but I've never stopped believing that I could be more than anyone expected. Give me the chance to prove it." The committee members exchanged glances and spoke in languages Maya couldn't understand. She waited, her future hanging in the balance, as the greatest minds in the galaxy decided whether a human mining station orphan deserved a chance at greatness. Finally, Director Zoreth spoke again. "Ms. Chen, by unanimous decision of this committee, you are hereby accepted as a provisional student at the Celestial Institute of Advanced Sciences. You will begin classes immediately and will be evaluated continuously throughout your first year. Should you maintain satisfactory progress, your provisional status will be removed and you will be granted full admission to the institute." Maya felt the world spin around her. She was in. Against all odds, despite every disadvantage, she had been accepted to the most prestigious institution in the galaxy. The forgotten girl from the mining station was about to become something the universe had never seen before. But, as she walked back to her quarters, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that her real challenges were just beginning. Being accepted was one thing. Surviving among the galaxy's elite and proving she belonged there would be something else entirely. The other students had been preparing for this their entire lives. Maya would have to learn to swim while already drowning in the deep end. She looked out her window at the campus below, where students were gathering for evening meals and study sessions. Somewhere out there was her future, bright with possibility but fraught with challenges she couldn't yet imagine. Maya Chen, the forgotten girl, was about to discover just how much power she truly possessed, and the galaxy was about to learn that underestimating humans was a mistake they would never make again. Maya's first month at the institute was a humbling experience that made her question everything she thought she knew about herself. The other students weren't just intelligent, they were brilliant in ways that seemed to transcend normal understanding. They had been raised from birth to think in concepts that Maya was only now encountering for the first time. Her roommate was Zara 9, a young Andromedian whose species had been genetically engineered for enhanced cognitive abilities over thousands of generations. Zara's brain could process information at speeds that made normal conversation nearly impossible. She would often finish Maya's sentences before Maya had even fully formed the thoughts, and her casual observations contained insights that would have taken Maya hours to reach. "You think very slowly," Zara observed one evening as Maya struggled through an assignment on quantum mechanics. "But you think in interesting patterns. Most humans process linearly, but your mind moves in spirals. It's inefficient but creative." Maya gritted her teeth and returned to her studies. The coursework was overwhelming. Her classmates discussed concepts like 11-dimensional mathematics and temporal engineering as casually as Maya might have talked about the weather. Professor lectures assumed knowledge that Maya simply didn't possess, and she found herself spending every free moment in the institute's vast libraries, trying to catch up on centuries of educational foundation she had missed. The worst part was the social dynamics. Maya had hoped that intellectual achievement would level the playing field, but the institute students had their own rigid hierarchy based on species prestige, family connections, and academic pedigree. As the only human and the only student from the galactic rim, Maya found herself at the very bottom of this structure. "I heard she got in through some kind of charity program," Maya overheard Zorthak, a Centaurian noble, saying to a group of his friends. "Can you imagine? They're lowering standards to accommodate primitive species now." Maya tried to ignore the whispers and snickers that seemed to follow her everywhere. She focused on her studies with grim determination, staying up late into the night to master concepts that came naturally to her classmates. Her grades were adequate, barely, but adequate wasn't going to be enough to prove she belonged here.
The turning point came during Professor Kethery's advanced theoretical physics seminar. The class was working on a problem that had stumped galactic scientists for decades: the question of how to achieve stable faster-than-light communication without the energy requirements that made it impractical for most civilizations. Professor Kethery, a distinguished Syrian whose species had invented the first FTL drives, presented the problem as a thought exercise. The fundamental issue, he explained, is that quantum entanglement breaks down over interstellar distances due to background cosmic interference. Every proposed solution requires energy outputs comparable to stellar cores, making the technology useless for practical purposes. The class discussed various theoretical approaches, each more complex and energy-intensive than the last. Maya listened to her classmates propose solutions involving exotic matter manipulation, dimensional folding, and time-space bridges, all requiring technology that was centuries beyond current capabilities. As the discussion continued, Maya found her mind wandering to her days in the mining station. She remembered watching the quantum crystal sorting equipment, noting how certain crystals seemed to maintain their properties even when separated by great distances. The miners had called it a curiosity, but Maya had always wondered if there was more to it. What if we're approaching this backward? Maya said suddenly, her voice cutting through the sophisticated discussion. The class turned to look at her, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed annoyance at being interrupted by the human charity case. Professor Kethery raised one eyebrow. "Explain your thinking, Ms. Chen." Maya felt her cheeks burning but pressed on. "We're trying to force quantum entanglement to work over long distances, but what if instead we used the natural properties of certain crystalline matrices to create relay networks? Some crystals maintain quantum coherence naturally, even when exposed to cosmic interference." "That's impossible," Zorthak interjected. "Quantum coherence requires perfect isolation from environmental interference. Everyone knows that." "But I've seen it," Maya replied, her confidence growing. "On the mining station, we processed quantum crystals that maintained their properties even in the presence of massive electromagnetic interference from the mining equipment. The crystals seemed to create their own stable quantum fields." Professor Kethery leaned forward with interest. "You're suggesting that certain crystalline structures might act as natural quantum field stabilizers?" "More than that," Maya said, her mind racing as the concept took shape. "What if we could engineer a network of quantum crystal relays, positioned at strategic points throughout the galaxy? Each relay would only need to maintain entanglement over relatively short distances, maybe a few light years. The network effect would allow communication across the entire galaxy with minimal energy requirements." The classroom fell silent. Maya could see her classmates exchanging glances, some skeptical, others thoughtful. Professor Kethery was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. "The logistics would be staggering," Lyra said finally. "You're talking about placing millions of relay stations throughout the galaxy." "But the energy requirements would be manageable," Zara9 added, her enhanced mind quickly running calculations. "If Maya's theory about natural quantum field stabilization is correct, each relay would only need enough power to maintain local entanglement. The network effect would handle long-distance transmission automatically." Professor Kethery activated his teaching display and began sketching out Maya's concept in mathematical terms. "This is actually quite brilliant," he said slowly. "The theory is sound, though it would require extensive testing to determine which crystalline matrices could provide the necessary stability." "I might know where to start," Maya said quietly. "The quantum crystals from my home station showed remarkable stability properties. If someone studied them systematically." "Consider it done," Professor Kethery said immediately. "Ms. Chen, would you be interested in developing this theory as your first-year research project? This could be groundbreaking work." Maya felt the world shift around her. For the first time since arriving at the institute, she wasn't trailing behind her classmates. She had contributed something genuinely valuable, an insight that none of the galaxy's greatest minds had considered. Word of Maya's communication network theory spread quickly through the institute's faculty. Within days, she found herself invited to present her ideas to the Department of Applied Physics, the Center for Galactic Infrastructure, and, eventually to the Institute's governing council. The presentation to the council was held in the Institute's great amphitheater, a soaring space that could accommodate beings from hundreds of different species and environmental requirements.
Maya stood at the center podium, looking up at tier after tier of the galaxy's most distinguished minds, and fought to keep her voice steady. The current approach to galactic communication treats faster-than-light transmission as a brute force problem, she began, her presentation floating in holographic displays around the amphitheater. But nature has already solved this challenge.
We just need to learn from it. Maya outlined her theory in detail, explaining how naturally occurring quantum crystals could form the backbone of a galaxy-spanning communication network.
She presented her observations from the mining station, her analysis of crystal properties, and her projections for how such a network could be constructed and maintained.
When she finished, the amphitheater was silent for a long moment.
Then, Director Zoreth spoke, their crystalline form pulsing with energy.
Ms. Chen, if your theory proves correct, you will have solved one of the fundamental challenges of galactic civilization.
The implications for trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange are staggering. There is, however, the question of implementation, added Counselor Valdres from the Research Division. Testing your theory would require significant resources and access to rare crystalline materials. I may have a solution for that as well, Maya said, her confidence growing. The mining station where I grew up sits on one of the largest deposits of quantum crystals in this sector. If the Institute were to establish a research facility there, we could conduct extensive testing while also providing employment and education opportunities for the local population. The council members exchanged glances. Maya realized she had just proposed something unprecedented, using her disadvantaged background not as something to overcome, but as a resource to leverage for the advancement of galactic science.
Over the following months, Maya's life transformed completely.
She found herself at the center of one of the Institute's most ambitious research projects, working alongside distinguished faculty members and leading graduate students to develop and test her communication network theory. The research team's first trip to Kepler 442b was a revelation for everyone involved. The mining station that Maya had considered a backwater proved to be sitting on a treasure trove of scientific resources. The quantum crystals buried in the planet's crust showed properties that defied conventional understanding, maintaining quantum coherence in conditions that should have been impossible. These formations are extraordinary, Dr. Jan Sector, a leading expert in crystalline physics, told Maya as they examined core samples.
The crystal matrices show natural quantum field generation that we've never seen before.
Your insights were absolutely correct. Maya worked tirelessly with the research team, her intimate knowledge of the mining station's operations proving invaluable. She guided them to the richest crystal deposits, helped them understand the local environmental conditions, and served as translator between the Institute's advanced theories and the practical knowledge of the mining workers. The project also allowed Maya to give back to the community that had raised her. The Institute's research facility brought new technology and educational opportunities to Kepler 442b. Maya established a scholarship program for young people from the mining station, creating pathways for others like herself to access higher education. You've changed everything, Voss, the draconian supervisor who had once overseen Maya's work in the mines, told her during one of her visits home. The young ones now talk about becoming scientists and engineers instead of just dreaming about escape. But Maya's greatest achievement was still to come. Working with crystalline samples from dozens of worlds, her research team successfully tested the first prototype quantum communication relay. The device, no larger than Maya's fist, could maintain stable quantum entanglement over a distance of 5 light-years while using less power than a standard household energy cell.
The successful test made headlines across the galaxy.
Suddenly, Maya Chen was no longer the charity case from the mining station.
She was the human who had revolutionized galactic communication, the young scientist whose insights might transform civilization itself.
The recognition brought new challenges. Maya found herself invited to conferences on core worlds, consulted by government officials, and courted by powerful corporations interested in developing her technology. The attention was overwhelming, but Maya kept her focus on the science and the potential to improve life for beings across the galaxy. You realize you're going to be famous throughout the galaxy, Lyra said one evening as they studied together in Maya's lab. The Arcturian girl who had once dismissed Maya as a charity case had become one of her closest friends and collaborators.
Fame isn't what I wanted, Maya replied, adjusting settings on the latest prototype relay.
I just wanted to prove I belonged here.
And, have you? Proved you belong, I mean?
Maya looked around the lab, filled with cutting-edge equipment and staffed by some of the brightest minds in the galaxy, all working to develop her ideas. Through the window, she could see the lights of the Institute's campus, where thousands of students from hundreds of worlds pursued knowledge and understanding.
I think I've proven something more important, Maya said finally.
I've proven that intelligence and potential can come from anywhere, even from places the galaxy has forgotten. The Institute is better because it accepted me, but not because of some favor they did for a disadvantaged human. It's better because diversity of experience leads to breakthrough insights. As her second year at the Institute began, Maya Chen was no longer the forgotten girl from the mining station. She was a rising star in galactic science, a bridge between the elite academic world and the working communities that kept civilization running. Her communication network was moving from theory to practical implementation, with the first relay stations already under construction.
But Maya never forgot where she came from.
She maintained her connections to Kepler 442b, continued to mentor young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, and always remembered that her greatest strength came not from trying to fit in with the galactic elite, but from bringing her unique perspective to bear on universal challenges. The galaxy had tried to forget Maya Chen, but Maya Chen would not let the galaxy forget the potential that existed in every forgotten corner of civilization. Her power had always been there, waiting to be revealed. She just needed the chance to show the universe what a human from the rim could accomplish when given the opportunity to shine. The communication network that would bear her name was already spreading across local star systems, connecting worlds that had never been able to speak to each other in real time. Soon, it would span the galaxy, carrying voices and ideas and dreams across the vast distances that separated civilized worlds. And, at the center of it all would be the principles Maya had learned in the mines of a forgotten station, that valuable things could be found in the most unlikely places, if you just knew how to look.